Good morning, Coolest Coast. It's time for Coffee on the Coast. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge, and welcoming back to the show, Tim Gadzinski, Manitowoc Public Library. With alacrity, I greet you this morning,
Oh
Tim.
my goodness. I didn't really study to come on the show today. I should have had my word for the day calendar ready.
Pulling out all the words. If you were
Pulling out
gonna,
all the words.
if you were gonna assign a word for the day, what would you choose for today? What do you want us to all try?
Sesquipedalian.
Sesquipedalian. Is that something that has 70 feet?
I'm not allowed to say. I'm just the giver of words. People must seek knowledge.
Oh man. Okay, who's got access to their Google search right now? Who can tell
Oh,
us what
oh,
sesquipedalian?
you
How can we
mean
use it if we don't know what it means?
the portable Google machine? Well, should I pick an easier word?
Sure.
Sandwich. Too easy? I swing like a pendulum. I don't know I don't really think about the words I use in terms of how obscure or how brainy they are. Words just tumble out of my mouth, and I hope they make some sort of sense.
Okay, what words are going to tumble out of your mouth if I put this on screen?
The first word that pops to my mind is fortunate. The second word that pops to my mind is laid back. I'll use a hyphenated word, and exceptionally excited, and I'll use a hyphenated word for that as well. I can't believe that we're having this event at the library this Saturday. We had discussed coming up with a program that was sort of uh, NFL draft adjacent at the library. We wanted to do something that tied in, but as a library in a small town on the shores of Lake Michigan, how do you compare with something that is just a machine like the NFL draft? It has such hype behind it, and so much juice. Everyone is so hyped about the draft. It was the same way when I lived out on the East Coast and the draft was exclusively in New York. People just got crazy whipped up about it, and,
Is it more than sports fans? Or is it like, are these diehard
it's a
sports fans?
combination. It's a combination. Well, you were talking about guy dates, this morning
Yeah.
on the other version of Coffee on the Coast, which I don't
Coffee
get to
with
take.
Kristen and Tina.
Coffee,
We put a
it
little
just
plug
makes me
in.
feel inadequate. It just makes me feel inadequate. But, that was like a big guy date thing. Like groups of guys would go, and it would be more about like having snifters of brandy and smoking cigars than it would be about, they had a rooting interest in their team, but it was really about getting together with friends. It's completely morphed into super fandom now, I would say. And that's cool. It's not necessarily my sort of pastime. I'm not going to dedicate an entire afternoon to see a college player that I probably have never heard of be drafted by the Packers in the hopes that it's going to be something that works out and makes the team better. I mean, I think in some ways it's replaced religion. Yeah, and I mean that sincerely. It's like there's just this hope that if you have enough faith in the people that run your team, everything's going to be great. And for one magical day called the Super Bowl, you're going to feel as if everything makes sense in the world. So that's my opinion. I hope I haven't alienated anyone by saying that. But anyway, so the library wanted to come up with something that was football related, but not necessarily exactly happening draft week that we couldn't compete with the NFL draft. So we toyed with the idea. We bandied things about like maybe bringing in a former player. But we came up with the idea too late to really land anyone. Everyone was committed. I figure for the draft around here, they've probably been committed for years, and we were just a little late coming to it. Or an author event, because there are people who have written books just exclusively about the Green Bay Packers. But we have a lot of author events, so that really didn't stand out. And I remember that our friend Lee Douglas mentioned just in passing one time that he was good friends with Bill Jartz, and I thought to myself, well, Bill Jartz started as the sports guy at Channel 2. He was their sports director. Well, why don't I just ask Lee if maybe, Bill would be interested? And so he asked what type of program I wanted to do. And I said, just something really casual, where we just sit down and, well, you're familiar with the style of programming, the interview style presentation, and just talk to Bill about his life in the public eye and what it's like to be the game day announcer at Lambeau.
So there's the real tie-in, right? Is that he's been the game day announcer?
He also, now I'm not sure what sport it was, but he went to Northwestern on an athletic scholarship. So I don't know if he ever toyed with going professional as an athlete or not. That's one of the things I'm going to ask him about. But the tie-in is that he started as the sports director at WBAY, became an anchor, but is the voice of Lambeau at all the home games.
And most of us around here know him. We've seen his face since 1983. He's
Yeah.
been the WBAY TV anchor, and he is now retiring.
Yeah, and that's another thing we're going to talk about because just in our brief conversations, he admits that it's terrifying to retire. And I can see why most of my adult life, not that I was like a super follower of WBAY because I lived outside of the area for a long time, but I've known about Bill Jartz and who he was and been familiar with how he looks because his look really hasn't changed that much since he arrived most of my adult life. I've had an awareness of, who Bill Jartz was and his presence in the media.
Yeah, I'd venture to say Bill Jartz is a household name.
Well,
And it
I
does
would,
say he's one of the most recognizable faces and voices in Green Bay. And he's been doing it for 4 decades. So, right, how do you redefine yourself after 4 decades?
yeah, I want to find out what's next. What are his plans? I mean, even if it's just sitting in a lazy boy and, eating macaroni and cheese.
That'll be good for like a week and a half, and then he's gonna wanna do something.
Probably, but mac and cheese is pretty great. You know, I mean,
Especially if you add a little broccoli, then it actually feels healthy.
you can zazz it up. I've never felt that it was healthy. I would just like to say that for the record, even with adding broccoli to the mix. But Mara and I used to make a version that we called gourmet when we lived out in New Jersey, and we really we
What's
didn't eat
gourmet
that
mac and cheese, Tim?
Okay, so we take Kraft mac and cheese, but instead of using butter and milk, you take a can of cream of mushroom soup, mix it in, then add the cheese powder. But to that, you also add a can of sliced mushrooms, a few Wampler turkey hot dogs, and here's the kicker, Bacos. Not real bacon bits, but
Oh,
Bacos, the artificial bacon bits, because their crunch was more
yeah,
substantial. And
yeah.
we refer to that as gourmet.
You've heard it here, folks, on the coolest coast. Gourmet recipes for mac and cheese. Gassing
another
it up with Tim Gadzinski.
another version, you can take a can of Hormel chili and replace you don't use the soup, you don't use cream of mushroom, but you just replace the milk and butter with that, add the cheese sauce, and enjoy.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So many different spin-offs. Never even thought of it.
So much salt, so much sodium.
Yes. Don't attach the word healthy to what we're talking about.
Oh, no. Gourmet, yes. Healthful, no. But,
What about
so,
truffle oil? Did you ever experiment with like something like that?
oh, Tina, we couldn't afford truffle oil back then. Are you
Oh,
crazy?
you're not still making this recipe?
We weren't Rockefellers. No, I got to tell you, I've been toying with the idea, though. I'm like, I wonder, because I think we really believed it tasted decent, because we had it on more than one occasion. But I don't know. I would like to try it again, but I'm a little fearful. Mara does make something that we refer to as world famous, which is actually healthy. It's a ground pork and kale dish.
Ooh.
Very spicy over rice, and it's really good, and it's very satisfying. And that is a dish with a nickname that I can say is actually healthy.
Ah, nice. And
So
what's the
world
nickname?
famous.
World
World
famous?
famous.
Gotcha. Nice. So
Mara's
that
always
sounds
like,
delicious.
"We're having something tonight you've never heard of," and I'm like, "Is it world famous?" He'd be like, "How did you know?"
Okay, but we
We
devolved.
did.
So on Saturday, that's this Saturday, April 12th, 1 p.m. at the Manitowoc Public Library, Bill Jartz will be there, and it's a Saturday conversation. So tell us how this is going to go down, Tim. You will be sitting down for an interview and having a conversation with Bill.
Yeah, we're just going to be in the Balkanski room. We're going to set up two semi-comfy chairs with a table between us for water, and we're just going to start. I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm like, tell us what your life was like growing up, because this is what I really find fascinating. Over the past 4+ decades, we've heard Bill Jartz talk on an array of things, be it sports, to being first the daytime anchor on the news, to being the 10 o'clock anchor on the news. We've heard him talk about an array of things, but we never really hear him talk about himself. And I
Mm.
think it's fascinating because, like you said, he is so ubiquitous. Everyone in this area knows Bill Jartz because not only did he just come to the area, I mean, he's homegrown. He grew up about 30 miles away from Green Bay, and
I
then he went
wonder
away to college.
so you mentioned he went to college on a football scholarship. I wonder how that morphed into becoming a TV anchor. I wonder at what point he changed trajectory.
Well, I know that his major was sports journalism when he
Oh.
was attending school, so it was a natural step. I imagine he has such an ease, and it's weird because he's got an energetic ease. He's engaging in a way that draws you in, doesn't push you out. His energy is very magnetic. And in a real simple way. It's not. It's just kind of every guy and a regular guy sort of way. And I find that fascinating that, we know what he looks like. We know how he sounds, we know what time he's on TV, but we don't really know a whole lot about him. So as much as he's willing to divulge, I'm never afraid to ask questions.
I wonder if
You
he's
know,
a cat guy or a dog guy.
yeah, I know. I would say dog. I mean, put that picture up. I mean, especially yeah, that's a dog guy right there, don't you think?
I think so. I think
I
so.
mean, there's probably a dog like right off camera to the right or under the counter there. But I even want to ask him like how good a parking do they give him at Lambeau?
Oh, right.
I just want to find out just the silly little things that you know about people that you've known for a while. And we've known Bill for a while. We just don't know him.
Yeah.
And I just want to get to know him a little bit better. And I figured a casual sit down was a good idea. And Lee thought it was a good idea. So he said, well, I'll call Bill. It sounds like it's something you might want to do and have him give you a call. And I was thinking, well, okay, hopefully in a week or two, I won't have to pester Lee and say, hey, did you mention something to Bill? Because I got back to work and about half hour later, my phone rang and it was Bill Jartz.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. Lee's
And he
like a
was like,
magic maker.
yeah, he's like, Lee tells me you want to do a program with me. I'm like, Mr. Jartz, thank you so much for calling me back. He's like, please call me Bill. Mr. Jartz makes me feel like I'm in trouble with the law. And I'm like, all right, this is exactly how I had hoped it would work out.
That's
You know?
awesome. Yeah, he just has a very authentic feel about him, the way he
Yeah,
interacts. And you're right, delving, peeling back a little bit and seeing who is he really
yeah.
would be
And I'm
cool.
just really looking forward to it. This is far and away, and I've described this to other people this way too. It has to be the most casual program that at least I've ever been involved with at the library, and I mean that in the most positive way. There's I mean, I wouldn't call it a script. I've got some questions on a notepad, but that's about it. And I've talked to him on the phone, and he wanted to know if he needed to dress up. I'm like, certainly not. He's like, well, what are you gonna wear? I'm like, well, jeans, a black T-shirt, and probably something an overshirt over that. I said pretty much what I wear to work every day, and I'm just really looking forward to it.
Is there a way that audience members can ask questions? Can they submit them or?
We're not going to do submitted, but we are going to have a Q&A period after at the end of the interview.
Oh,
And
cool.
so and who knows? I mean, if questions start popping up 15 minutes into it from the audience and it turns into just a give and take with the audience, I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean,
Oh,
it's absolutely, it could just as well be called spend an hour and a half with Bill Jartz, so I
yeah,
have
the
my stuff.
flexibility to morph into just whatever works best for who's gathered. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's going to show up at 12:30, and that's when the doors open for the event. And we're just going to make sure our lapel mics are working because it's not going to be super amplified, but just enough that nobody has to struggle to hear what we're saying. And I'll have a mic ready for if people are quieter when they ask questions, I'll run around Phil Donahue style with a microphone, and and get the questions in. But I'm just really looking forward to him making his way to Manitowoc for a Saturday afternoon, and essentially really just hanging out for a
For
bit at the library.
sure. Do you
It's
think
a
he'd be
structured hangout.
amenable to taking photos with people?
I haven't asked him, but I'd be shocked if he wasn't.
Okay.
I mean, he just seems like the kind of person that wouldn't bother him at all.
Yeah. What a
So
cool experience you have planned. Okay, putting this up again. So it is a Saturday conversation with Bill Jartz. So Bill Jartz, he is the voice of Lambeau, where he became the game day public address announcer in the 2005 preseason, and he's been the WBAY Channel 2 news anchor. This is going to be a casual afternoon conversation focusing on his career in the public eye, maybe finding out if he's a dog guy or a cat guy, other fascinating tidbits. This is all happening Saturday, April 12th. Starts at 1 o'clock p.m. at the Manitowoc Public Library. There is going to be open Q&A session with everyone in attendance. It sounds like a casual, just a great way to hang out. Perfect opportunity for a buddy date, right?
yeah, exactly, a buddy date, a girls' afternoon out. I think it's good for everyone. But when you brought up buddy dates, it's a good reason for guys to get together and talk sports or just talk about his life. What he wants to
Yeah.
do, and then after it gets going, just it's early enough in the day that you can still continue on to an array of activities at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday.
And it's cool that it's NFL draft adjacent. That was brilliant programming, I have to say.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't, it just worked out. Sometimes you just get lucky. And I thought it was really a nice companion to the draft. It's not, butted right up against it. It just kind of, keeps your interest going. It gives you an amuse-bouche for the NFL draft. There we go. Let's go with amuse-bouche.
Yes, I
It
love it.
took,
You read
it
my
took, it
mind.
took a while, but I got there.
All right, viewers, your challenge this week is to use the term amuse-bouche in conversation.
Yeah, and if possible, not in relationship to food.
Oh, right.
Because it's really easy to say that Vienna, a can of Vienna sausages is the perfect amuse-bouche for gourmet.
Could you say that using a delightful word like amuse-bouche is in itself an amuse-bouche?
It's a conversation. Amuse-bouche is a conversational amuse-bouche in and of itself.
There you go. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope everyone really enjoys the conversation with Bill Jartz this Saturday at Manitowoc Public Library.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Tina. As always, it's a pleasure. It's a
My
blast.
guest today, Tim Gadzinski of Manitowoc Public Library. I'm your host, Tina Prigge, signing off for Coolest Coast. We'll see you next time.
Bye.